You first need to understand how the business process is operating, what's the different steps in it, what's the different variants, how it works in a usual way, how it behaves in an unusual way. Once we map those processes in an automatic way, by the way, automatically, like an X-ray vision of processes, we then discover the gaps. We then discover the exposures within those processes. Because if you understand how a thing works from end to end, then you are able to say, okay, when it doesn't work well, why did that happen?
This episode is brought to you by Green Skies Analytics, an audit analytics service provider that works with internal audit departments that have data analysts and are still frustrated with trying to make analytics actually work, aren't getting the expected ROI, who can't break through the communication barrier between the analysts and the audit team, and those that need experienced direction for an audit analytics strategy and process. Those that feel like they've wasted time and money on trainings, aren't getting the value they want, not prioritizing the highest risk areas for the organizations, or have projects that seemingly never get completed. Do you deal with any of that? If you do, go to the show notes of this episode and click the Green Skies Analytics link, or go to greenskiesanalytics.com to schedule a call and understand how Green Skies Analytics makes analytics actually work for internal audit.
This episode is brought to you by Datricks. Finances are the pulse of enterprises, yet their integrity is exposed to human errors, non-compliance, and fraud that can cause a 5% loss to the organization. That's pretty crazy, right? Datricks is an autonomous solution that enables finance leaders to eliminate these vulnerabilities, transforming businesses from a state of exposure into a beacon of financial integrity. Its financial integrity platform achieves this through autonomous process discovery, which, without needing any input, continuously analyzes financial processes to understand business context. Integrity exposure detection uses AI and machine learning to identify problems and anomalies across all business areas, analyzing them in real time within the context of financial processes. And integrity intelligence, which gives finance leaders a comprehensive control tower to understand the overall financial health of their organizations and see the issues that matter. With airtight financial integrity, CFOs boost their bottom line, improve working capital, and confidently scale financial processes, vastly increasing their contribution to the growth of their organizations. To learn more, please visit datricks.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell, and today on the show, we have Haim Halpern. He is the co-founder and CEO of Datricks, which, if you listen to the pre-roll, you are very well familiar with Datricks. But if not, it's an innovator in AI-powered risk mining. Very cool tool if you haven't looked at it. Haim's held key leadership roles in companies providing solutions for finance, audit and compliance, and cybersecurity. Before founding Datricks, Haim co-founded ExactSoft, which is an SAP consulting firm, grew it to 400 consultants before being acquired by One Group. And this is what we probably could have just done this as the intro, and you guys would have gone, yep, Haim sounds super cool. Let's listen to this. Haim served in the Israel Defense Forces Center of Computing and Information Systems. I thought that was awesome. Some of the things that we hit on during the show, though, trends that we're seeing in analytics and AI for internal audit. If you're a habitual listener to the show, you know we have some kind of standard questions we ask everybody just to kind of get to know the guests a little bit more. We have a new one, and Haim is the first guest that we've asked this question of. I'm not going to tell you what it is. So continue to listen to find out. I think it's something that we all need to ponder very philosophically as we go about our email communications. We also ask a lot of guests who are CAEs, hey, I'm sure you know the audit, role really well. What advice would you give so that we can develop stronger executives who are also auditors? So rather than CAEs, hey, we want an executive who is also an auditor. And given that we have a CEO on the show in Haim, we asked for his advice to pass along to current and or aspiring CAEs. And I got to be honest, I asked Haim this, and we ask a lot of the guests before we come on the show and do the recording, like, hey, what are you especially passionate about? What kind of topics do you want to make sure we hit on? And Haim said, detecting, protecting, and mitigating risk for enterprise companies. And I went, sounds like a pretty typical CEO answer. But when you're a founder of your own company, what you're passionate about is exactly that. And I think you will definitely hear it from Haim as he talks about his passion in detecting, protecting, and mitigating risk for enterprise companies. Like, that's a very real statement for him that I think, again, that you're going to hear through his emotion and through the way he talks about that. And so when I was talking to Haim off air before we did the recording, he said Datricks allows organizations to be audit ready all the time. And I went, that sounds super cool. I like the way that sounds. Let's make sure to talk about that on the show. And so we go into that as well. And then lastly, we talk about how Datricks and Haim and team are really helping CAEs get a real-time picture of risks in their processes. And so we talk about exactly how they are doing that. With that said, I really enjoyed doing this one. Thanks a lot, Haim and the Datricks team for coming on. Here we go. All right. What is in either your internet browsing history or your ChatGPT history, Claude, Llama, any of the LLMs right now? What's going on in your world outside of maybe work?
Well, I started a new hobby, and it's called epoxy resin creations. I thought of, how can I connect something new with something old? And I had a very old switchblade collection, which I didn't want to throw away. So I thought, why not make a table out of it? And so I just started to learn how to do that, how to mix the right amount of epoxy resin, where not to do it, right? Like how it won't catch dust and how wind affects it and everything. So I learned how to do it. And then it's really cool. I created like a large table out of switchblades, which is great.
I've seen this twice now. It's kind of become somewhat internet famous. It's on Reddit. So if anyone wants to look into it, you can, but you probably don't even have to attach Reddit to the search there. But it's a hot dog encased in resin. And it's basically every month or so, whoever made it will take a picture to see if it's basically moldy and gross on the inside. So that's been about the extent of mine. And then the other day, actually, it's a week or two ago, I saw someone at some pizza place. I don't even know where it was, but they encased a pizza in there, and then they leave that hanging outside so that there's like a legit fully cooked pizza in the resin that's sitting outside. So maybe it is
interesting. It's interesting to try food inside epoxy resin. Haven't tried that yet, but
yeah,
sounds interesting.
Yeah, throw some food in there, and then tell us how that's go. We could do a monthly podcast update. Whatever your food item is, we'll get the pictures and get them posted. All right. Outside of that, what are you seeing in terms of trends with AI and analytics in general? Maybe we can stick just internal on if we want to, but there's a lot going on. It changes extremely fast. It is pretty difficult to keep up at times. But what are you guys seeing?
Well, you said it. It's so hard to keep up with all the changes and all the technology advancements that are made. What we decided to do and implement is a strategy that says run fast, break things, use as much as possible. Don't overcook. Don't overcook it. Don't analyze to death. So basically, use AI as much as possible, as often as possible, but for the right reason. And don't just use AI for AI. So, for example, if you want to reduce the heavy load of, audit reporting and audit creation and copy pasting of findings, use AI to do that. Feed it with your latest audit reports and have it create the next one. That's great. That it would reduce about around 80% of your time, and you just need to, revise the final copy and not fully edit it. That's great. Use AI to create user stories around risks for internal auditors. That's even better, right? You can train your new auditors, you can better understand risks, and use AI to do that, and that's great. But don't just use AI for the sake of using AI to try to find anomalies, because then you might end up looking at the wrong things at the wrong places. Sometimes AI hallucinates stuff. So you want to make sure that it's contained, that it's well encapsulated, and it's possible to do it. We're doing it now, and it's become like second nature, right? You cannot ignore it. You cannot run away from it. You shouldn't run away from it. So just harness it to your powers.
And this is probably going to be dated in a few months, but that's what we've been recommending also is, hey, you said it's second nature. I think second nature for a lot of people is to go to their favorite search engine. And that's kind of where they do their research or ask their questions. And so what we've tried to tell people is stop doing that. Just replace that, delete it.
Yeah.
We had one CAE said that he deleted his search engine off his phone so that he would just use ChatGPT so that he could use it more. So I really
I
like
totally
that.
agree. It's like search, Google search, right? It's like Netflix killed Blockbuster, right?
Mhm.
And iTunes killed Napster.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, or using prompts and questions to get answers and not lists of links, that's the new normal. I mean, you search for something, but you want to get a result, right? Even when you search for a trip or trip options, you used to get a list of places on a map. Now you get a recommended tour, and you just go on it. You don't,
Mhm.
start to look for what's open, what's closed. You ask, what's the nearest open restaurant that follows these and these guidelines? And you get driving directions over there. It's not something that you need to search and look for. So I totally agree. Search, it's cliche saying that search is dead,
Yeah.
because people have said analytics are dead, and they said software is dead. Even earlier in time. But so it's cliche saying X is dead, but use AI as much as often as possible.
All right. We don't usually plug ourselves on the show, but I mean, you almost mentioned the title exactly. So we did write an article with
Yeah.
Audit Board on is analytics dead, basically because of AI,
Nice.
and we released that last week. So it's very top of mind. So
Oh.
I'm hearing that. I mean, we heard it so much. So okay, we need to get something out there about that.
Yeah, please don't forget that when you use public AI solutions, your data is open. Even though, even if someone says, we keep it private and we delete it, maybe that's true. Uh, don't overshare. If you want to use AI for sensitive information like internal audit reports, risks, fraud events, and so on, you better use something that's more private, that keeps your privacy, at the center of things, and maybe it's even, completely private, not open at all. So there are good options out there. You don't have to overshare and share everything out there.
Move fast, keep privacy in consideration. Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. Okay. On to the more serious topic. Emojis in emails. Are you, I guess, thumbs up, thumbs down, emoji wise? That's a little low notes for that, but thumbs down.
Thumbs
Okay.
down. Yeah.
No emojis in emails. Okay.
And an occasional smiley. It's okay, but don't over emoji yourself. Yeah, that my kids use them. I rather use a smiley, and that's it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. We always ask guests to give CAEs advice on how to be a stronger executive. Like that's a very common question when we have CAEs on. Hey, how can other CAEs be better E's or executives? Like most CAEs have the very strong audit, the A background. The E is, probably fairly new to them, and there's not like a ton of trainings around how to be a CAE or even books or resources on that. And so we've tried to ask that question to help aspiring or current CAEs that. But you, as a CEO, what advice would you give to CAEs to be a stronger E or executive?
My most basic advice to CAEs and to anyone, basically any executive in a company, is you need to become a part of the conversation or a part of the business. And in order to do that, you must understand the business and not just your playing field. So what I mean by that is that if your company produces something, makes something, sells something, first understand the market it operates in, understand the different business functions in the company and what makes them tick. How do they look at business processes? How do they look at their external environment and internal environment? What matters to them? Once you understand that, you are able to become a much more valuable part in the entire machine, because people will find you useful. If people just look at you as the person that finds what's wrong with things and blames everyone and points fingers, nobody likes that person. But if you help them become better, improve their performance, suggest business related opportunities to them, just because you are the only one that has access to everything. Nothing is restricted. Nobody can tell you, oh, you can't know that, you can't see that. You see everything. That's the largest power you can have in a company. Use that power, don't abuse it. Use that power to make everyone besides you better. And that way, you become a much better executive, become a valuable member of your leadership or your executive team. And I always like to say that it's becoming, instead of a cost center, a value center. And once you become a value center, everybody wants to be around you.
We get that, whether it's for how to be a stronger E or whatever. Like a lot of times we get the answer of understand the business. That's how we can add the most value. And I've told the story so many times, but I asked a very experienced auditor, is it more important to know the business or no audit? And immediately she didn't blink. She said, know the business. And so we've asked other people, like, how do you learn the business, especially if it's an industry that you're maybe new to? I don't know, when I was in external audit, we only did this a few times. I'm not sure why we did it sometimes and not others, but we would take, I think it was at an airline, literally like, hey, someone swipes their credit card to buy an airline ticket. And we followed that all the way through till it hit the books, basically, as a way to understand the business. It was a benefit of it. I'm sure it was some kind of control we had to test along the way also. But where would you start? I know some people have said like, hey, attend earnings calls, things like that. But would you go, hey, how do we, where's the revenue come from? Let's start there. That's pretty important to understanding the business. But if you had to like tactically, not methodically, but step by step, what would be the first step in understanding a given business or industry, assuming you don't have a background in that?
I would start with analyzing the core business processes that operate within a company. So, start with the most basic ones that everyone has: procure to pay, order to cash. That deals with all of the spend and all of the revenue. And then analyze, the even more core processes. So if you're a manufacturing organization, analyze the make to order business process from end to end. Always touch something around the HR process, so the hire to retire process. If you're in finance, analyze the acquire to retire, the record to report processes. All of those will give you a very good understanding of who are the process owners, who are the other stakeholders involved in processes, and more importantly, what are the numbers? Because it's, at the end of the day, as an auditor, as a finance person, it's a numbers game. You get to know the numbers pretty well, and then you can have a valuable conversation with those stakeholders to learn more. I believe that it's possible to do it automatically, to do an automatic analysis, not just a statistical one or a sample one. And when you analyze those processes, the whole world kind of is revealed in front of you. All the cloaks are taken away and you see everything. Once you see everything, most often you also know what's wrong and what doesn't really work well or what looks suspicious. And it gives you even more leverage because then you know how things should operate and what happens when they don't. And then you become a master, of your domain. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to know how to sell shoes or how to produce, oil. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you understand the mechanics of how those business processes function within your organization, which is, extremely valuable in my opinion.
Yeah, so I think if I was a CAE in a new industry, it sounds like I would just basically plug in Datricks or something similar, and then I would, I mean, that speaks to a lot of what you were talking about. I'd have a pretty clear picture of what was going on. In addition, obviously talking to the stakeholders and the like. So, all right, with that said, I was curious to ask you this. We've had a few CAEs hit us up and say something to the effect of, not exactly, well, one literally said this, but they said, hey, my CEO said, go do AI, or like, go use AI, without a ton of direction or really maybe even an understanding of why. But it was just, this is the thing now, go do it. What, if you're the CAE and the CEO says, hey, go do AI, what's your response to that?
First of all, no problem. I
Mm,
do what the CEO says. But
yeah.
being serious for a second, um, as I said before, using AI in audit makes a lot of sense if you use it responsibly and in the right places. So using AI to find anomalies is not necessarily the right thing to do, because then you need to be able to explain them, and maybe that will create a lot of noise. However, if you do find risks, do find anomalies, and then you use AI to better explain them, to create a user story behind them, to make prioritization of all the alerts you get, that makes more sense. If you use AI or LLMs to write an audit report based on the latest financial statements and the latest audit reports as templates, copy pasting in automatically the latest findings and the mitigation plans and everything you would have done manually anyway, and just use AI because it understands the context and it has a very good document editing capabilities, then that's a good use of AI. If you want to use AI, for example, and integrate it into your enterprise copilot function, and then use your AI to answer risk-related questions like, who are my top 5 most dangerous vendors and why? Oh, by the way, this vendor is okay, I know them. Give me the sixth one or the second best one, and have a conversation around that. That's a good use of AI. And it's possible to do it in a very straightforward way today. But don't overuse it. Don't think for a second that you can wave a magic wand and say, oh, AI will find all of my risks and save all of my. No, it doesn't work that way.
Right. I like the way you put that, dangerous vendors. I have not thought about that, but that's an interesting prompt, because I wonder what they would interpret dangerous as, and then that answer versus give me maybe the riskiest vendors or something, like something like that. But dangerous, that's really interesting. I don't know. If for those that are doing any kind of analysis like that, I would love it if someone has done something similar and come back and share any results. I think that's fascinating.
I can give you an optional result to this type of prompt. It would have to take into account, for example, blacklisted vendors, together with a risk profile that was built for a vendor. Let's say if it hasn't been used for the past year and a half, so
Right.
18 months of no POs, and now suddenly a surge of POs, or if it had multiple small invoices or predated invoices, or suspicious activities that raise the risk profile. Combine that with a blacklisted, I don't know, government data set that says that this vendor has been blacklisted for, I don't know, supporting terrorism. That's a dangerous vendor. Maybe if you're concerned about ESG, then integrate into the data set also their ESG rating, right? If they're a green vendor or not. Add that to the mix. There's so many options, and when you open, when you open it up, there are so many options that bring actual value. Because otherwise, you would have to search for them, right? You would have to create filters and queries, and it's so much more fun to just write a prompt.
Yeah, that's what I think because there's the rule-based way of doing that we've always done with audit analytics, exactly like you're saying, like who hasn't issued a PO in, over a year. Cool, let's give them a risk score. Or if they're like the top vendor, or they have an average of $1,000 a transaction, and now we see one that's 20,000 or something like that. Like you can build those rules in, and we've always done that. And then you kind of score each one and go, okay, this vendor got a risk score of 157. This one got 282. This is the highest one. Let's go look at the one with the 282 score. But
Yeah.
just to throw, somewhat flippantly, I'm saying this, like just throw the data in and ask it which one's the most dangerous. I'm gonna read this directly, at least, because I asked you, and we ask a lot of guests this, like, what are you passionate about? We asked this off camera just to get an understanding of what it is folks are especially passionate about, so that we can make sure that you hit on that. If you're passionate about something, that's going to come out during the conversation. And so that's what we try to hit on a lot of times. And I asked you this, and at first I think people are going to go, that's a company line. I don't really believe it. I know I've talked to you enough to know that it's not a company line. And it is your company. And so like, this is you. I mean, this is what you're passionate about. So when I asked you, you said you're passionate about detecting, protecting, and mitigating risk for enterprise companies. And I do. I feel like if I would have just said that without any kind of preface, people would go, yeah, of course. I mean, that's sounds like something a CEO would say, whether they mean it or not. I know that you mean that. Again, we've talked enough. I believe it, and it's the vision for your organization. So you don't just make up, a vision for kicks and giggles. But anyway, with that said, where does that passion come from, and how does it translate into the work you all are doing?
I'll tell you like a short story, or I tried, to perfect that vision, and I always try, I work on myself a lot, and I try to get a crisp message or a crisp vision, so as many people would understand it. And I recently thought of this entire, my passion and vision in a bit of a different way. I always tell my customers that there's a survey by Deloitte that says that on average, companies lose 5% of their yearly revenue to fraud. I
Right.
bet you know that survey. It's a well-known survey. And I always say, even if it's just 1% and not 5 out of your revenue, that's a whole lot of money, which you can recover and, do better. And then an analyst just told me the other day, so basically your vision is to save 1% of the world GDP.
Hmm.
And think about it, right? If you combine the entire revenue of the entire world into the GDP, your purpose is to save or raise the world's GDP by 1%. Now, think about it. It's a huge, 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 huge vision and opportunity because, reducing fraud, even set aside fraud for a second, mistakes,
Right.
plain mistakes. That's an amazing value I can bring, or we can bring to companies worldwide. And I truly believe that it's a it's a cause worth fighting for. It's something that everybody should be in line with, because everybody becomes better if they are able to achieve it. So I truly believe that it's possible.
You might want to trademark that 1% of G. That is a good line. You guys might want to go ahead and, maybe we hold off on publishing this one until you go, hey, we're good legally. That's ours now. Now you can publish it. That's a sweet line. Like I could buy into that and go, yeah, that's awesome. Like that's a vision and something worth kind of fulfilling. I a huge fan of that. All right. Datricks specific. I know that one of the kind of taglines there, whether it's published or not, but you said that it makes your clients audit ready all the time. And I went, oh, that's interesting. What does that mean? Like, what's the value of that? What does that mean?
Yeah. So Audit-Ready all the time also came from one of our customers who asked us, can we achieve that with Datricks? Can we be always audit-ready all the time? Which means that whenever I get an external audit, whenever my CEO or audit committee comes in and says, oh, what's going on here? What's going on? I know that I don't have to do anything extra. I don't have to, sweat it out and say, oh, let me check, let me see. No, I know I can rest assured that I can sleep well at night and say everything is in line. All the risks are in check. I'm constantly looking for new risks. I'm constantly working on existing risks to mitigate them and reduce them or eliminate them. And everything is in check. That creates financial integrity, that creates trust between the different parts of the organization, the ones that are doing the work and the ones that are controlling and monitoring the work. And this high level of trust, I believe, creates better organizations at base, but it also gives the CAE and the CEO a place of of comfort, knowing that everything is in check, everything is handled. And the other side of the coin says, well, let's do it once a year, just for the auditor's sake, just for the reports we have to publish, and what goes on between those reports, okay, nobody knows. We'll fix everything whenever the time goes by. And if we end up getting our name in the paper because something bad happened and we had to disclose it, oh well, that's the cost of business. That's a valid approach also. It just so happens that every other day we see in the papers, this company has disclosed a fraud of $150 million. This company has disclosed a fraud of $50 million. This person went to jail. This person went to. Okay, there's a better way to do it.
I had this term that we coined, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and I called it socialized continuous monitoring. I think that's what we called it. It was basically, hey, if AP or whoever, if they know that audit is running these analytics against everything that they're doing, basically, you're going to, like, if you're committing fraud, you're gonna go, okay, it's time to stop doing that. And so I'd be curious if there's been any, like, if you all notice when basically you go live to see the difference in activity of this is before and this is the after, to see, like, did something fishy maybe stop happening. Like, to me, I think there's value in that. And I'd always said if I was a CAE and I had no budget, I would just basically tell everybody in the organization, like, hey, we got this thing, we're plugged into all of our data sources and we're running analytics specifically for fraud, every single day or something. Even if I couldn't afford it, or, whatever the case, it didn't have the resources, I would go, yeah, we're doing that. Cause I guarantee that there's some story about it was like a mechanic shop or something like that. And so initially they hired or bought like these really expensive guard dogs, and then they replaced that with a camera, and then they replaced that with a fake camera, and saw the amount of break-ins decrease with that. And they're like, camera doesn't even work, but they think it does. And maybe that's where the idea came from. But have you seen anything like that? Like, have you guys
Sure.
looked post implementation to go, this looks cleaner or different now than the activity
It
before?
happens all the time.
Yeah.
People's nature is to do the right thing when someone is looking.
Uh-huh.
That's reality, right?
Yeah.
They say that people are measured if they do the right thing when no one is looking. But in an organization environment, if they think that someone is looking, then obviously they'll behave better. Some won't. Some won't care. Some will do it anyway. But of course, if they know that they're being monitored and there's a continuous control program running, obviously infringements will decrease. But you need to remember that it's not just about fraud or evil acts.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's plain mistakes. Sometimes it's people trying to do their job faster, and they get held back by regulations, compliance, more procedures, and they want to do some workarounds just to do their job faster, just to do their job better, right? It's not about doing something bad or stealing something. It's just achieving more in the same time, which is, by the way, pressure we see all the time.
Right.
Teams get the HR decreased and so on. So people are stressed, and when people are stressed, sometimes workarounds, mistakes happen. So not necessarily that if someone is monitoring, those will decrease, but on average, we do see some decline in bad activities found. I can give you an example. We had a customer that had an issue around check reprints. They had, like, I don't know, 50 checks being reprinted every month, and they suspected that something fishy is going on there. Always the excuse was the check printer wasn't aligned and there was no ink in the printer or something like that. So they just issued a new procedure saying that if you reprinted the check, you must send a photo of the torn up check, the bad print check, to the manager that is in charge of it. So the first month they got 30 photos, and then nothing. And all of a sudden, all the check printers in the company started working
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
There was always ink, and everything was okay. They just found, by the way, another way to do whatever they did. But anyway, I totally agree. If you put in fake surveillance cameras, crime decreases. That's a fact.
I'm reading this. It's timing's always interesting. I feel like serendipitous or otherwise. I don't know. But I'm reading this. I've been reading biographies this year, and some on Marcus Aurelius. He was the Roman ruler and famous Stoic. And I'm hardly a Stoic, but there's lessons sprinkled in throughout there. And one of them was basically act as if a mentor or someone you respect and look up to in any given space is with you kind of constantly, and like over, and then you think about that. And so, like, if you're at the gym and you think about, I don't know, if there's a fitness person, Instagram influencer that, you look up to, aspire to be, and you go, I really don't want to do cardio today. And you go, well, what if they were here right now with me? I would be more willing to do cardio. And so I think, I don't know, I thought it was interesting. I was literally reading that this morning, that bit, and it was kind of like, all right, just assume Marcus Aurelius is with you all the time. That's a lot of pressure. Like, I don't know if I could, like one of the most famous Stoics and leaders of all time. That's, I guess if they were on my shoulders the entire time, certainly the discipline would increase. So anyway, I appreciate that. All right. As I start to close it out, I know that what you all do at Datricks, you do allow CAEs, internal auditors, to get a real-time picture of risks in their process. How are you doing that, though? Like, what does it actually look like? Talk about Datricks a little bit, if you could.
Sure. So at Datricks, we believe that in order to understand risks and discover them in the right way, you first have to understand the business process. Exactly as I said, if you want to be a better executive, you need to understand what's your business like. The same goes to audit. You first need to understand how the business process is operating, what's the different steps in it, what's the different variants, how it works in a usual way, how it behaves in an unusual way. Once we map those processes in an automatic way, by the way, automatically, like an X-ray vision of processes, we then discovered the gaps. We then discovered the exposures within those processes. Because if you understand how a thing works from end to end, then you are able to say, okay, when it doesn't work well, why did that happen? So with every exposure, we immediately see the root cause because we understand the entire process context, and we are able to capture the dollar amount and the level of exposure, the severity of it and everything. And it's not just like other, event-based fraud detectors that have just the event data to rely their opinion on. We have the entire process context. So we first analyze how the business operates, then find the exposures. Everything is done automatically, by the way, with a lot of built-in content, with a lot of tweaks to eliminate false positives, to be right, on the money, and not take care of the small stuff. Let you focus on the real important risks, because we are also aware that you don't have too much time on your hand, right? As an auditor, time is of the essence, and you must be able to focus on the riskiest areas the most. I said riskiest vendors. It goes to any type of risk we find. Handle the most important ones first. So once you see all of that, it's also important to be able to communicate that to your leadership, right? To your CFO, to your CEO, to your audit committee. So aggregating those risks, building automatic dashboards that show the risk over time, the risk over vendors, over departments, to analyze it in a thorough way, to build like a social understanding of the relations between the risks and the people. That's also super important. And we do all of that automatically. That means that it's not a project-based approach to understand and eliminate risks. It's a solution, it's a platform that analyzes the financial integrity of a company and gives you the right places to intervene and fix those exposures. That's what we aim to do. We do it very successfully, for customers running the most common ERP scenarios like SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, Salesforce, all of those, but also any other type of common or custom environment. In the most common ones, it's fully automatic. In the custom ones, it may need some help, some alteration, but it's also super fast. And our promise to our customers is that in under 7 days from initial data access, they'll get results. Maybe it's not 100% results. Maybe it's just 80 or 90%. But it's actual results with actual value, super fast. That proves that, it's not a consulting gig. It's a fully automatic platform.
Haim, thanks for coming on. I think what you guys are doing is fantastic, and it's kind of been a solution and that had been looking for when I first started doing analytics. I was like, hey, it'd be cool if this thing existed, and you have built that thing. So anyway, with that said, I do want to give you the floor. Any closing thoughts, anything you want to leave the audience with?
Well, Trent, my motto in life is be good, do good, and good things will happen to you. And I think that's a very, I think, relevant statement in today's environment. So I'll just leave you with that. Be good, do good, and that's it.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.